You know, what the role for trade unions in today's climate, it couldn't be clearer, could it? Because Parliament's failed us. Westminster's failed us. They're doing nothing. There's a Tory party that, to be quite honest, I don't think there's ever been a good Tory party, but these are the worst I've ever seen. They're all over the place. They're sort of in the downward spiral. They're in free fall, a bit like they were when Tony Blair got elected. When Labour got elected under Blair, the Tories were in downfall. Labour hadn't improved really. It's just that the Tories have got so bad people didn't trust them. I think we're getting sort of like that again, and there's a danger of getting Labour elected with Starmer as a leader, and I think that will do the Labour movement decades worth of harm, to be quite honest. The Labour movement is far more important than the remnants of the Labour Party that's left now, and that's maybe something we can talk about a little later on, because while politicians have failed us miserably, trade unions and community organisations have stepped to the fore. We see workers taking industrial action across all kinds of industry. Can you remember we even had barristers went on strike and got a 15% rise? I never thought I'd see that in my time, but we've seen all kinds of workers take, not just the traditional industrial workers, we've seen workers in all kinds of industry taking action. When all politicians offered for the healthcare workers, for nurses and people, was a clap on a Thursday night. Yeah. The unions have gone out and have been winning some advances. We haven't all won everything, it's not all been great, but we're taking action. And I think that's what will help the trade union movement. I do fear that trade unions sticking to Labour may damage some trade unions, and I think a fear I have, it may damage the political fund. Because if people tie the Labour Party to a union's political fund, that's a very small part of it. All your political campaigns can't take place unless you've got a political fund. Like, for instance, Mail on Rail. That campaign would never have been able to take place if we didn't have a political fund. So we've got to separate the difference between the political fund and affiliation to Labour. That's what needs to happen. When you look at what's happening with the Labour Party now, when we've got MPs disciplined for standing on picket lines, particularly one who stood on a picket line of the trade union he used to work for before he became an MP. You know, that's disgraceful, isn't it? You can get MPs doing all kinds, getting up to all kinds of mischief, and they don't get disciplined in that same kind of way. Now, there's things happening. I don't know if that's happened today or it's happening this week. There's a motion from trade unions to the TUC about support for the war in Ukraine. And let me get this straight. I'm not a pacifist. There are wars that needed to be fought. It was right to fight Nazis in the Second World War. The Spanish Civil War was a just war, fighting fascism in Spain. But you know, there are wars that are not justified. And I remember, I think it was it 2002, 2003, there was that massive march to stop the war in London. Biggest one I've ever seen. I remember Trade Union General Secretaries, ASLEF General Secretary, speaking on that platform. So one of the biggest marches ever assembled. And I found something out today, I know I've got it somewhere, and the ASLEF Motherwell branch celebrated its centenary in 2012. And they go through a number of things that happened at Motherwell branch, and there's one here, the Peace Train 2003. Any fear that the union sentiment among the drivers would disappear under private ownership was surely dispelled by the actions of two Motherwell drivers in the midst of the 2003 Iraq War. Both drivers refused to drive armaments trains to Glen Douglas, which contained war material for the Gulf. Both drivers cited their decision on the point of principle and opposition to the war. All change can start with small acts of principle, and their actions reverberated around the world. ASLEF received letters of support from as far away as Germany and America. So that was the stand of one particular trade union in the face of that unjust war. Now we find that we've got trade unions, trade union leaders are pushing not to stop a war in Ukraine, but to keep a war going, on and on. Nothing's being spent in trying to stop it. Businesses, through all this war, are making a killing, an absolute killing. Billions spent on keeping a war going, nothing spent on ending the war. So, the top 10 hedge funds made 1.56 billion from war food prices. This is just the Ukrainian war. Oil companies, Chevron, ExxonMobil, Shell, BP, $134 billion made out of this war. the war machines of BAE, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon Technology, Northrop Grumman and Rheinmetall, making billions of pounds out of this war while it keeps going. Now, war crimes take place in every war. It's only ever the losers who get done for them. But trust me, the victors commit these crimes as well. It's so dehumanising. So to find that we've got trade unions, the trade union movement now supporting, continuing what's not a just war. I mean, there needs to be talks for peace. There needs to be peace. And I would suggest, I mean, who am I? I'm a retired train driver from Donny. I would suggest the need for peace should start. Proper negotiations. And let's start with the disputed territories. Let them have their say in fair elections and choose whether they want to be Ukraine or they want to be Russia. Let's do that. That's better than seeing loads of people killed, but it will stop companies making profits. And trade unions need to stand up on that. It's a bit like the GMB, when we were all campaigning in Yorkshire to stop fracking in the Yorkshire Dales, the beautiful scenery. And the GMB said, no, it'll cost our members jobs. There's things that come more important than that. And we need to start talking about when we've got people starving in Britain, we've got people can't pay the rent, can't pay the bills. We shouldn't be spending billions of pounds to the war machine to put profits into people's pockets.